Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, the Diofield Chronicle for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, PC, and Nintendo Switch. The Diofield Chronicle is a co-developed game by Square Enix and Lankhars, and it is a real-time strategy turn-based RPG. Now, even though this is a Square Enix game and the general aesthetics and character models in terms of the animation, not necessarily the in-game models, I will definitely talk about that later, are very reminiscent of, say, Final Fantasy Tactics and some of the more grandiose MMOs from Final Fantasy, be it Final Fantasy 11 or Final Fantasy 14. But the gameplay is actually closer to something like XCOM or Ogre Battle or even Fire Emblem, where you take a cast of characters, you can only have 4 characters on your team at a time, and take them onto the battlefield. Now, when you have them attack, they attack automatically when they're in range of an enemy or when you designate a specific enemy for them to attack. Now, the only time that the battle does pause is when you decide to move that character or issue a command, such as utilizing one of the character's special attacks that takes up EP, very similar to MP in other RPGs, or moving that character to a different area, or say utilizing an item. And one of the more interesting aspects is that you can actually stack those special attacks by attaching one character to another via the main menu. Of course, like any of these type of games, be it RPGs or strategy games, there is a lot to handle and manage at a time, specifically trying to take care of your health of your characters, potentially capturing certain zones that can be utilized to not only unlock certain parts of the map or the battlefield, but also to, say, turn a turret against the enemy. And to me, one of the biggest faults of the game in general when it comes to the gameplay is just realizing if your character is attacking or not, because some of the functionality problems when it comes to the gameplay is rooted in the fact that the game is not very static. And by that I mean when you're trying to, say, focus on one character, the game has a tendency of switching to another character so you can move that character instead, which is very odd because you will scroll and actually highlight the character you intend to either move or attack with, and then when you hit the select button, it will actually switch to another character that is closer to that enemy, even if it means that that's not what you had in mind, that's not your strategy, because there are certain elements that you can utilize to your advantage, like ambushes, pincer attacks, by positioning your characters in a certain way. And the game will sometimes try to be almost auto-helpful and not realize that I want to do this manually. As I mentioned in the demo, I was surprised about the inclusion of summons, and just like I thought, there are more summons than just Bahamut in the full release that I am thoroughly enjoying. I love the idea of utilizing your summons at the tail end of a battle, and then maybe even utilizing them a little too early, thinking that the battle was almost over. Now, another interesting aspect when it comes to the gameplay is stipulations. Now, certain stipulations are pretty obvious, like keeping your team alive, but there are other stipulations that can really put some crunch to a battle, like defeating all the enemies in 4 minutes, and for yours truly actually getting it done in 4 minutes and 29 seconds. One of the things that I couldn't really get into when it came to the demo, because it wasn't necessarily available, was the expansions of side quests. Now, one thing I noticed with the side quests was that certain ones would lead to you actually having a battle. Others would just involve you actually interacting with characters, running back and forth and talking to a variety of characters, and that was the only thing you had to really do. But the thing I didn't know about when it came to side quests that I do know now with the full release is the fact that certain side quests will actually unlock extra characters, which is a very cool feature, because that means not only are side quests beneficial in gaining experience points and gold, but also will actually help improve your party. Now, one thing I didn't mention when reviewing the demo is the fact that there are certain elements when it comes to upgrading the overall team and specific characters. There are the points that are gained for each character that you can use to actually spend on passive abilities, on upgrades like extra EP or improving the luck chances of a character. But there are also these skill-based upgrade points that are gained by either usually completing a mission objective, like defeating all of the enemies or finishing the mission before a certain time limit, that will allow you to upgrade the skills and abilities of a specific class. So for example, if you have the skill points available, you can spend an extra skill point to upgrade the effectiveness of the healing that is associated with the mage category. And this applies to all the classes and all the abilities. But this also ties into equipment that I really didn't talk about also in the demo review, is the fact that certain equipment actually changes the loadout of these abilities. So depending on what weapon you choose, you may not have the ability that you initially had. But that also helps tie into the fact that you can stack your characters. You can actually have your characters linked to each other. So one character may have the ability that you want, and if you link it with the other character that is going to be active on the battlefield, then you are able to still utilize that ability. You also can switch out units as you expand to Chapter 2 of the game, where you can switch out characters up to 3 times. So if you feel like your character is either about to go down or you feel like that they are not the best suited for this battle, for example, certain characters are good against animals, whereas certain other ones are more apt against soldiers. It's easy to just switch out that character in the middle of a battle and switch in the character that you feel is more applicable to whatever the scenario calls for. One thing I don't necessarily care for when it comes to the overall presentation, specifically when it comes to the upgrade system and the unit expansion system, is the fact that when it comes to weaponry, you actually have to pay more money than you would have expected. The weapons forging system has characters utilizing gold that is attained during missions or gained via treasure chests that are also associated with certain missions. And with that gold, you can actually send out an order to craft a specific weapon. Now, I just assumed that you would get that weapon in your inventory and be able to equip it. Instead, you actually have to go to the weapon seller after you've gotten that weapon forged to purchase the weapon, and usually these weapons are at a very high price. And early in the game, and from what I've heard from others even later in the game, the amount of money that you gain is not very beneficial in terms of trying to keep everyone upgraded, everyone with the best equipment, and that means that there will be sacrifices that have to be made instead of being able to enjoy the weapons that you've gotten to forge with the gold that you've saved back. You look at it on the opposite end of the spectrum, where you can upgrade the passive abilities and overall abilities of your summons with the in-game currency. And those abilities, of course, are on the summon automatically. I don't understand why the same thing couldn't be applied to the weapons upgrade, the weapons forging system. Now, when it comes to the story, thus far, it is very much par of the course. You have one empire now feuding with another, with one, of course, being portrayed as the evil empire that wants to conquer everything, and you have to put a stop to it. Now, it doesn't take long before they throw a lot of lingo, a lot of lore, and a lot of names your way, so you have to be on your toes if you actually care about the story and pay attention to everything that's being thrown at you at a breakneck pace when it comes to just the first chapter alone. But from an aesthetic perspective, beyond the very incredible still images that you have voiceovers with, are the in-game models that are stiff, look very 7th gen, and do not inspire much to look at. And that is complemented by the actual interior environments that are bare bones as bare bones can be. It is definitely uninspired and something that it feels like it was unnecessary. It feels like just exploration for exploration's sake. Is very similar to what they did with Stranger of Paradise. Technically, I didn't have any problems beyond some of the aforementioned gameplay issues. I didn't have any hard crashes or technical glitches. Overall, the Diofield Chronicle is, as I said when it came to the demo, is one of those games that I thoroughly enjoy from what I've experienced thus far. It is a great tactical RPG with some stellar gameplay mechanics. While there are some issues with the movement, the targeting system at times, and of course the weapons forging system that I did not care for in the way they implemented it, it's still a fantastic game that is one of the big surprise hits, once again, of 2022, where you see a lot of smaller games coming out that are really shaking up things in terms of the quality and producing something that is very memorable. And I have to say, if this is your type of game, if you like the tactical RPG systems, then you will definitely enjoy this game. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions, the Diofield Chronicle, for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, PC, and Nintendo Switch. Now I'm going to go back and figure out what in the world do I have to do to make sure that I get the best equipment possible. Oh, I know how. By slaughtering a bunch of foes under the time limit. They're giving me 6 minutes to do it, and I think that's exactly what I'm going to accomplish, as I make every foe on the battlefield say, "Oh Lordy."